After the first years defeated Keel with the help of Kaji and his vice captains, their friend Nagato was finally returned to Enzai and Tsuchiya. We also caught a glimpse of a mysterious guy covered in tattoos, who seems to be plotting something against Bofuri. In this video, we will delve deeper about Sakura's realizations after the fight and take a look into the life of one of the four kings of Bofuri. Let's get started. It's a fresh new day after the intense battle between Furin and Keel yesterday. We see Anze, Kurita, Takanashi, and Kakeuchi happily taking a lunch break in the classroom. Anze got hurt while drinking orange juice, and Takanashi asked him why he was drinking something sour while his mouth was still freshly wounded. Anze replied that he wanted vitamin C to help heal his wound, but Kakeuchi corrected him, saying that vitamin C is supposed to be for dry skin. Kurita suddenly interrupted, saying that what Anze really needed was protein, as he snatched Anze's last piece of fried chicken. Anze got angry and chased Kurita, who ran off after shoving the food into his mouth, saying he'd rub lemon on all of Kurita's wounds. Anze then caught Kurita and started choking him. Kiryu and Nire watched, enjoying seeing their lively classmates, especially Anze, who was clearly having fun teasing Kurita. The classmates began wondering where Sakura was since they hadn't seen him all day, and he hadn't replied to their messages. Tsujura suggested that Sakura might still be sleeping, but Kiryu doubted this since it was already past noon. Anze mentioned that he was worried about their grade captain, who seemed depressed after their fight yesterday, prompting Nire to try calling him. When Sakura answered the phone, the four friends were happy, but their smiles quickly faded when Nire couldn't understand what Sakura was saying. Suddenly, Sakura hung up, leaving them all wondering what had happened to him. Hearing his groggy voice, Nire thought that Sakura might be sick and feeling unwell. Their classmates Suwa, Tsujura, Kiryu, Kakeuchi, Takanashi, and Anze, who was still choking Kurita, were all shocked and worried at the same time. After class, the two vice captains, Suwa and Nire, decided to visit Sakura at his home, bringing plenty of food with them. Nire wondered if they had bought too much food as if they were planning a trip, but Suwa explained that they were all worried about Sakura and that it wouldn't be practical for the entire class to visit him at once. They soon realized that Sakura's house was quite close to the school. Knowing that Sakura wasn't originally from the town, they initially thought his home was far away. They speculated that Sakura might have moved to their town because his parents relocated for work. After a while, they reached Sakura's house. Nire looked happy, but Suwa seemed surprised and scared by the black cats, rusty and broken signs, and vines growing around the house. According to Suwa, Sakura's house looked like a haunted house. However, Nire pointed out that it still looked like an apartment complex. They climbed up to Sakura's apartment and rang the doorbell for room 201, but Nire noticed that it wasn't working. So Suwa tried the door, and finding it unlocked, they entered. Seeing Sakura's shoes inside, they were sure they were at the right place. Entering the apartment, they found it almost empty, with Sakura's dinner from the previous night left untouched in the kitchen. Nire was still nervous about entering unannounced, but Suwa proceeded, as Sakura wasn't responding to his calls. Suwa reminded Nire that Sakura lived alone and was probably too sick to move. Then, Suwa asked Nire if he knew the worst-case scenario that could happen to Sakura. Scared, Nire suddenly screamed, thinking Sakura might have died alone without their knowledge. Just then, Sakura's bedroom door opened, and he angrily asked why they were making so much noise. Nire fell back in shock, thinking Sakura was a ghost, but Suwa reassured him that Sakura was alive and well. Sakura was surprised to see his friends visiting him. He nearly fell over due to weakness, so he leaned against the wall. He asked them what they were doing at his place, and they explained that they were worried about him since he was feeling unwell. Sakura was speechless, unable to believe they were concerned about him. Suwa apologized for waking him and helped him back to bed to rest, while he asked Nire to get the food they had brought. When they entered Sakura's bedroom, they were saddened by what they saw. Sakura's room was bare, with only a futon and a uniform hanging from the curtain railings. Suwa offered Sakura medicine and food since he was alone, but Sakura refused, lying down and wanting to sleep again. Suwa couldn't believe that Sakura, who usually had a big appetite, wasn't interested in eating. Nire wondered to himself about Sakura's backstory and how he ended up living alone in such a sad apartment. Even though Sakura declined Suwa's offer, Suwa instructed Nire to leave the food they brought, saying it was from all their classmates in foreign. Suwa said that all of them were worried about Sakura. Nire then told Sakura that since he was living alone, he should at least depend on them a little. He felt embarrassed saying this, as he had repeated it many times. But Sakura told them he didn't need their help and that they shouldn't worry about him because he was used to being alone and could take care of himself. Suwa was saddened by Sakura's words. Nire wanted to argue, but Suwa stood up and told him they should leave since they had delivered the gifts from the class and shouldn't disturb Sakura any further. Suwa's face showed some sadness, but he managed to smile a little. He told Nire they should go home now, so they left and said goodbye to Sakura, telling him to contact them if he needed anything. Sakura remained lying in his futon. But that night, he was still awake and struggling to fall asleep again. Listening to the rustling leaves outside, he reached for his water bottle. Finding it empty, he decided to get up and open the bag Suwa and Nire had left for him earlier. He was surprised to find it filled with nutritious food and drinks. But beyond that, each item had a sticky note with heartwarming messages from his classmates. Sakura's face was a mix of emotions as he recalled telling Suwa and Nire that he could take care of himself without anyone's help. While opening a drink, he contemplated his usual solitary life and how he had been content being alone. As he drank, he realized that his life was very different now because he had many friends, and he remembered what Umemiya had told him about having real friends he cared about. However, Sakura still denied in his mind what Umemiya had said. He tightened his grip on the water bottle in anger and frustration over his doubts. Then, he was startled when someone knocked on his door and entered his house, coming into his room. It was Tachibana, who was also worried about him. Tachibana apologized, thinking she woke Sakura up with the noise she made. Sakura was shocked that Tachibana had come to visit him. Earlier today, Suwa walked away while Nire hesitated to leave Sakura behind. Suwa glanced back when Nire called out to wait. Suwa waited for Nire to catch up. Nire was surprised that they had left Sakura in such a state. With a worried look, Nire asked Suwa if he wasn't concerned about Sakura. Suwa gave a comforting smile and was ready to answer Nire's question and teach him a lesson about taking care of their friend. While showing Sakura alone and wrapped in a blanket, Suwa said he didn't know what Sakura had been through, but based on the state of his room and his current condition, Suwa thought Sakura had probably been alone for a long time. Nire responded that this was why they should have stayed with Sakura. To help Nire understand, Suwa started with a question. He asked Nire to imagine being lost. Suwa then asked what Nire would want in that situation. Surprised by the sudden question, Nire thought for a moment. Nire chose his phone because he could use it to search for his location. Suwa explained that Nire chose his phone because it was something he knew how to use. Still confused about Suwa's point, Nire agreed. Suwa continued, saying that if you give someone something they don't know how to use when they need help, it only makes things worse. The scene showed Sakura hiding under a blanket while his phone charged. Suwa mentioned that Sakura probably didn't know much about smartphones, and certainly didn't know how to use one. Sakura's phone was shown full of unread messages from his worried classmates. Suwa said he thought this analogy applied to friendship too. Suwa explained that while Sakura was weak, he couldn't use his mental and physical strength to handle things that were not normal for him, like people worrying about him. Suwa reassured Nire that if Sakura didn't come to school the next day, they would visit him again. Hesitant, Nire agreed with Suwa. Nire then expressed his feelings, explaining to Suwa that he understood Suwa's point, but he wanted Sakura to learn about friendship and that if Sakura didn't see it, he would never be able to use it. Nirei wanted Sakura to learn to rely on his friends and let them take care of him. So when Sakura faced difficult situations, his friends could help him handle the problems. Nirei admitted that he had promised Sakura he would show him the way to the top of Furin. As an image of Sakura walking away appeared, Nirei added that Sakura always made his own path alone. So Nirei wanted to help Sakura, even if just a little, when he was lost or in danger. With a worried but determined expression, Nirei said firmly that he wanted to be helpful to Sakura, even if just a little. As they talked, they heard someone call out to them and turned around. They saw Tachibana, who looked like she was heading home with some bags. Tachibana asked if the two were making rounds in the town. When Nirei saw Tachibana, he immediately started excitedly talking about Sakura's condition, causing Tachibana to worry as well. Suwa smiled as he saw Sakura's friends caring about him and loving him. Tachibana lifted the lid of the food she had prepared for Sakura, revealing it was still steaming hot. Sakura was flustered and speechless because he wasn't used to such gestures from Tachibana. A close-up showed the delicious and appetizing egg congee. While sitting in bed with his feet wrapped in a blanket, Sakura cried out in surprise at the first hot bite of congee. Tachibana scolded him, telling him to eat it slowly and not gulp it down. As she observed Sakura's living conditions, with his uniform hanging by the window, Tachibana mentioned that she didn't know Sakura lived alone and that his room was not a good place to live. Tachibana also remarked that Sakura had no belongings and teasingly asked if he was a minimalist. Annoyed, Sakura told Tachibana to be quiet. As Sakura ate, Tachibana looked at him with a tender gaze and said she was relieved that he had an appetite, especially since Nirei had been panicking so much. With an annoyed expression, Sakura asked why Nirei was always so over the top and did unnecessary things. Tachibana, angry at Sakura's remark, asked what was over the top about the situation since they were all worried about him. She then hit Sakura on the forehead. Sakura was confused to find a fever patch on his forehead after the hit and didn't know how to react to Tachibana's caring gesture. Tachibana mentioned she had heard that Sakura had been in a fight again. As she tidied up, she said that Sakura always went all out, which was why he got sick. Sakura replied that the fight wasn't the reason. Tachibana looked at him teasingly and asked if the reason was that he froze during the fight because he was worried about his friends. Sakura choked on his food in surprise, and Tachibana offered him water. Sakura quickly took the water and, annoyed, asked Tachibana how she knew about that. Tachibana replied that Sakura was easy to read, even though Umemiya actually told her. Sakura drank the water and said he didn't believe it. He asked why he would let such soft things freeze him and make it hard for him to move properly. Tachibana looked at him tenderly and said that it still happened. Sakura couldn't move during the fight. Sakura glanced at Tachibana but chose to ignore her words. Tachibana said it didn't matter why he couldn't move because it couldn't be changed. He just needed to find other ways, like letting those around him who could move help him. Sakura tightened his grip on his spoon and asked if Tachibana was joking. While struggling with the issue, Sakura said he just couldn't do the things he used to. In an attempt to silence Tachibana on the issue, he said he could handle it alone and that it was his problem. Annoyed, Tachibana took back the food she had given Sakura to prove a point. Sakura was shocked and cried out for Tachibana to return the kanji because he was still eating. Holding the kanji away from Sakura, Tachibana asked if Sakura could make egg kanji on his own. Sakura was puzzled by the question. Tachibana said making it was simple, just mixing ingredients and putting it on the stove. But there was no stove, pot, or ingredients in Sakura's house. Sakura still didn't understand what Tachibana was trying to convey. Tachibana explained that while Sakura was sleeping, Nirei and Suwa had brought gifts for him, and she had made hot kanji for him. Tachibana conveyed that while Sakura was asleep, he got food that would help him recover because other people, not Sakura, had done something. Sakura just slept and rested, and when he woke up, he had food and water ready. Sakura replied that he could buy food on his own. Tachibana said that wasn't her point. Even if Sakura could do it, if someone else did it for him, he would have time to do other things. Images showed Sakura's classmates shopping for supplies, Suwa and Nire bringing them to Sakura's house, and Tachibana cooking while Sakura slept. Tachibana continued, saying everyone could only do things limited by the time on their clock. Tachibana returned the kanji and said Sakura could only do so much on his own. Sakura remembered Kaji telling him that there wasn't much Kaji could do. Sakura resumed eating the kanji. Sitting on the floor beside Sakura, looking at the empty shelves, Tachibana admitted that letting others do things for you and relying on them was indeed scary at first. Because of what Tachibana said, Sakura looked at her while she gazed out the window. The next day, birds were seen flying outside. The water faucet was running, showing a freshly washed kanji container and medicine bottle Sakura had taken. Sakura had washed his face and was determined to start a new day. We were back at Foreign. In the second-year classroom, someone called Kaji, saying he had a guest waiting outside while some students looked on curiously. Kaji removed his headphones, walked out of the room, and was surprised by what he saw. Sakura was waiting outside and said he wanted to talk to Kaji. Kaji asked Sakura what he wanted to talk about. Sakura answered Kaji and said it was about their fight against Keel. But his explanation was cut short because he was surprised by what he saw behind Kaji. Kaji turned around because of this. He was shocked to see his classmates peeking through the door and listening to their conversation. They teased Kaji, saying he was a good senpai to the first-year student guest. Naturally, Kaji was annoyed. Then, a tall second-year student recognized Sakura by his hair and praised him for his fighting skills, referring to his victory over Shishi Torin, where he left his senpais in the dust. When two more second-year students heard what their classmates said, they teased him because they knew he only had a stomach ache on the day of the fight and just rested. Another classmate told Sakura to let their classmate sulk. They all knew that Sakura had defeated the second-in-command in the fight, so they were very proud and impressed with him. Kaji yelled at them to return to the classroom and stop interfering with his conversation with Sakura. One of them continued to tease Kaji, saying that Sakura had even managed to tame Kaji himself. Kaji was really annoyed by this and said that he and Sakura would leave, while another classmate said they could just stay and talk there. Because of this, Kaji called his vice captains, Inomoto and Kusumi, to ensure their classmates wouldn't follow them when he and Sakura went somewhere else to talk. Sakura followed Kaji up to the higher floors, where they continued their conversation. Sakura admitted to Kaji that he was selfish, reckless, and overconfident during the fight between Furin and Keel. He had a lingering guilty conscience because he knew he didn't really do much for his classmates, and Kaji, Inomoto, and Kusumi had to come to help them win the fight. As Sakura recalled Tachibana's gestures and words, he said he understood that he needed to rely on others and let them help and support him. However, there was still something bothering him that he found difficult to admit to Kaji. He said he noticed that Kaji often delegates responsibilities and various tasks to his vice captains. Sakura asked how Kaji managed to do that and how he could entrust so many things to them. He also asked what he needed to do to be like Kaji. Kaji was a bit stunned by Sakura's question, so the surroundings fell silent and he couldn't immediately answer. Sakura quickly grew impatient and urged Kaji, but Kaji told him to be quiet. Kaji thought carefully about how to answer Sakura's question, feeling somewhat nervous about his awaited response. When Kaji finally thought of an answer, he suddenly looked at Sakura, who was surprised and puzzled. Kaji walked away to a vending machine and bought a bottled coffee drink for Sakura. Sakura accepted it, but was still puzzled about the coffee. Kaji thought again in front of Sakura, who still didn't understand what was happening. Then, Kaji suddenly walked away again, and Sakura followed him, asking where he was going now. Sakura followed Kaji to the school rooftop and asked why they had come here. Kaji said he had heard from others that serious matters are better discussed in a high and spacious place. Kaji confirmed with Sakura if he really wanted to know how to learn to rely on others. Sakura didn't speak because he was too shy to admit it, but Kaji could read in his eyes that the answer was yes. So, Kaji answered Sakura's earlier question, saying that the reason was that he couldn't do everything alone. Sakura tightened his grip on the bottled coffee and told Kaji that it was like saying he was weak if that was his reason for relying on others. When Sakura said he couldn't do it for that reason, Kaji suddenly took the coffee back from Sakura, who was surprised by his action. Kaji looked for something around, and when he saw a toolbox, he went to it and carved something on the bottled coffee he was holding. He then showed it to Sakura and asked what he saw on the bottle. Sakura replied that green tea was written on it, and Kaji said he was right, but the actual content of the bottle was coffee. Sakura still didn't understand what Kaji was trying to convey. When Kaji returned the bottled coffee to Sakura, he said that no matter how many times Sakura told him it was green tea, Kaji would continue to believe that coffee was inside the bottle. Just because the bottle's label had changed to green tea didn't mean its coffee contents would change. Sakura still didn't get it, so Kaji continued explaining that if Sakura couldn't admit to himself and others that he couldn't do things he really couldn't, it was the same as his illustration. Finally, it seemed that Sakura began to understand, judging by his stunned expression. Sakura had admitted to Kaji earlier that he knew he couldn't do everything alone and needed others' help. Because of this, Kaji knew that Sakura couldn't rely on others because he was really afraid. And that fear was the fear of being rejected by people. Sakura was surprised by Kaji's words, and bad memories and his dark past, where he was used to being alone, came back to him. He became conflicted, remembering all his new friends among his classmates, thinking that he should only care about himself because that's the life he grew up with. Sakura also thought that the only reason he was chosen to be grade captain by Nire, Suwa, Sugiura, Kiryu, and his other classmates was that they saw he was strong in fights. Sakura believed he had failed to meet his classmates' expectations in their fight against Keel, and if he admitted that he needed their support, he feared they would reject and leave him. As Sakura continued to sulk, Kaji sighed. While unwrapping a lollipop, Kaji told Sakura that he didn't know what Sakura thought others thought of him, but he was sure everyone knew Sakura was very afraid because it was so obvious on his face and seen by the entire Boforan. Sakura was utterly shocked by what he heard from Kaji because he didn't expect that everyone already knew the truth he was still denying. He immediately asked Kaji how they knew he was scared, and since Sakura asked this directly to Kaji, it further confirmed to Kaji that Sakura was indeed afraid. Kaji said that anyone could notice it, especially from the things he said to his classmates after their fight against Keel. Kaji likened Sakura to a cat and a dog who, the more frightened they are, the more they want to show that they are not afraid. The two fell silent again during their conversation. Then Kaji suddenly had something to say. Kaji told Sakura that there was a real ghost haunting this rooftop. Sakura's face showed that he was more puzzled than scared by what Kaji said. Kaji recounted that one night, a student went up to the rooftop and saw a woman in a dress staring at him. Naturally, the guy was very shocked and scared and told all his classmates about it the next day. So, some of his classmates accompanied him to check if it was true. When they went up to the rooftop, they only saw a plastic bag wrapped around the handle of a shovel. Sakura said that it wasn't a ghost at all, and Kaji agreed, telling Sakura that the guy who saw the shovel was scared of something that wasn't scary. Similarly, Sakura was the only one thinking that his classmates were rejecting him and was afraid of something he shouldn't be scared of. This realization hit Sakura hard, and guilt was evident on his face. Kaji told him that no one could read other people's minds, so no one could be sure if what Sakura thought was true. But the truth was that it didn't matter because whatever Sakura thought might give his classmates a reason to see him as weak, and even if they all noticed he was afraid in the end, none of his classmates rejected him. Sakura came to his senses when Kaji clarified the reality of the situation for him. Kaji added that this also proved that his classmates saw Sakura not just for his fighting skills, but for his true self. But Sakura continued to fear rejection even though no one rejected him. From Kaji's point of view, It seemed that Sakura had the wrong idea about his classmates and didn't see their true selves. Kaji told Sakura that he had no idea what had happened to him in his past, but he understood and related to Sakura's feelings. Kaji then gave Sakura a piece of advice. He said that Sakura should trust his classmates based on what he saw in them. The wind blew between them, symbolizing that Sakura had finally realized what he needed. He immediately thought of his 4 loyal friends, Nire, Suwa, Sugiura, and Kiryu, as well as the entire class 1-to-1. Sakura gritted his teeth in anger at himself. Then, Kaji suddenly blushed, saying that he had said too much. Suddenly, they heard applause. It turns out that Umemiya and Hiragi were also on the rooftop, and Umemiya continued to applaud Kaji, seemingly very impressed with what Kaji said to Sakura. Umemiya spoke up and told Kaji that what he said was beautiful, while Hiragi was trying to stop Umemiya because he was embarrassed for him. Umemiya directly told Kaji and Sakura that they had grown and matured a lot because they were now talking about their friends and themselves. Hiragi and Kaji suddenly looked at each other, feeling embarrassed. Hiragi apologized to Kaji, saying that he and Umemiya didn't mean to eavesdrop on their conversation. Kaji got angry because he was already very embarrassed. Then, Umemiya suddenly put his arm around Kaji and directly said that Kaji was becoming more like Hiragi in the way he spoke. This made Kaji even angrier and more embarrassed, so before Umemiya could speak further about their previous conversation, Kaji punched Umemiya directly in the face. Sakura was shocked by this, while Hiragi had expected it. Umemiya was sent flying and Hiragi told him that it was his own fault. Kaji took a deep breath after punching Umemiya and ran away. Umemiya immediately got up, his nose bleeding, and praised Kaji for his growth as a man and the strength of the punch he received. Hiragi, on the other hand, said that Umemiya deserved a kick in addition to the punch he got. Sakura had nothing to say about the chaos that quickly unfolded around him. Umemiya sat down and asked Sakura what he thought about the advice he received from Kaji earlier. Sakura tried to answer, but because he was still stuttering, Umemiya spoke again. He said that there were many things he couldn't do. And besides that, there were many things he did even though he knew they made him look silly and laughable. But despite that, he wasn't afraid of anything. And this was because Umemiya knew that everyone in Boforen would accept him no matter what he did. Because of this, Umemiya could do anything he needed to do without worrying. So, it was okay for Umemiya to do things that others couldn't do. And even though he looked foolish in some of the things he did, people still liked him. Everyone forms close connections and friendships. They forgive each other and depend on each other as friends. So, they always stick together. Umemiya told Sakura that it was okay. He should trust Kaji and trust his friends. So, he should do his best and do whatever he needs and wants to do. Sakura looked down, recalling what he had said to Nagato after their fight against Keel. He realized that he had become like Nagato back then, unable to look Anze in the eyes. When Sakura remembered telling Nagato if he was sure he wanted to treat his friends like that, he thought he had no right to say that to Nagato. Then he remembered Tachibana telling him that he needed to face his friends sincerely and look them in the eyes. Sakura gave a determined look, as if he had decided what he needed to do. After a while, Sakura returned to the classroom while Umemiya and Hiragi stayed on the rooftop to talk about Kaji, which made them both happy because Kaji was now the one giving advice to a first-year student. Hiragi was very proud and happy for Kaji, looking at a spot in the corner where he had a flashback. He remembered that this was where they had talked when Kaji first joined Boforen. And the things Kaji said to Sakura earlier, he got from Hiragi, who had told him that serious matters should be discussed in a high and spacious place. This dark and eerie scene represents Sakura's inner thoughts and most honest feelings about himself. It symbolizes his past, where he has always felt that the path he treads in life is as thin as a tightrope, where one mistake could easily cause him to fall. And when he falls, there is no one to catch him and save him. He is used to a hard life, alone, stressful, always tense, and difficult to breathe. He learned from adults and his experiences that life is inherently tough. But when Sakura is honest with himself, he always asks himself if maybe he can still find peace in his life, where he doesn't have to experience the negative things weighing him down and that he's grown used to, in a place where he can stand tall and not be afraid of falling. These thoughts and feelings run through Sakura's mind and heart as he walks toward the classroom. Meanwhile, in the classroom, Nire asks some of his classmates if they think Sakura will be absent again today. Kiryu suggests that they just ask Sakura himself in the chat. While taking out a protein powder pack, Sugiura says that if Sakura doesn't come in today, he'll visit Sakura and bring him some protein powder. Suwa asks if he brings it every day, but Sugiura says the protein powder pack he just took out is the one he leaves in the classroom. Nire suddenly looks up because they all see Sakura just arriving at the door with his head down. Nire, Suwa, Kiryu, and Sugiura stand up to approach Sakura and greet him. Nire says he thought Sakura would be absent again, while Suwa remarks that he looks better today compared to yesterday. Kiryu didn't expect Sakura to have a fever because of what happened, and Sugiura told him not to be rude since even he gets fevers after training too much. But even now, Sakura keeps his head down and remains silent, so Nire asks if he still feels bad. Sakura clenches his hands tightly as he thinks that he wants to jump and leave the tightrope he's been holding onto for so long. He recalls Umemiya's advice earlier to just jump and give it everything he's got. So now, he overcomes his hesitation and speaks in a strong, projected voice, capturing everyone's attention. Sakura tells the whole class that he thought he could still do everything alone because he's been used to that his whole life. But he failed them in their fight against Keel. What's worse is he took it out on them, and that he's a poor and disappointing grade captain. Sakura grips the tightrope, symbolizing his lonely way of life as he admits to his classmates that this is his true self. Despite his fear, he says he's sure he'll bring even more trouble to all their lives. And at that moment, Sakura manages to jump from the tightrope he's known for so long and falls freely. This is because he has said sorry and finally trusted his classmates, who are all looking at him. Then suddenly, Sakura gets a strong kick in the back from Tsujishita. The others are surprised, and Sakura angrily asks Tsujishita what he's doing. Tsujishita responds that it's Sakura's fault for standing at the door for too long. While Sakura is still annoyed, someone suddenly praises Tsujishita for his kick. It turns out to be Enzai, Kakeuchi, Takanashi, and Kurita, who rush towards Sakura. Sakura's face hits the floor as he falls, and Enzai quickly picks him up. The four glare angrily at Sakura while Enzai holds him by the hair and tells him to stop saying nonsense. Sakura is shocked and puzzled by this. Kiryu, Sugiura, and Suwa also speak up, saying what he said was mean and insulting. Then, Enzai grabs Sakura's clothes tightly. Enzai tells Sakura to stop pretending to admit to being weak because they all know he's a socially awkward, arrogant person who's a pain to deal with. But even so, none of them care about that. Sakura feels guilty again because of his realization of Enzai's honest words. Enzai says how could they feel disappointed in Sakura when they always see him getting hurt by the same things that hurt them, and he's so serious about worrying about these things. Why did he even think of apologizing to them when his response was natural, and that's what they all do to him too? Enzai tells him to be true to them and himself because what he did wasn't enough to annoy and anger them all. Because none of the people in Boforen are like what Sakura thinks they are. That's why they get annoyed with his thoughts. It doesn't matter if Sakura is socially awkward or too arrogant. He is still a person who will charge into trouble just to protect his friends. And for that, they all respect and like him for who he is. Sakura can only gape in astonishment when he realizes that after jumping from the tightrope from the dark place, it's only a short fall into a meadow, where the ground is soft and the grass feels good. The air is so fresh, and the surroundings are so peaceful and bright, and when he looks behind him, he sees all his classmates inviting him to join them. He accepts this invitation and immediately joins them, and this is when he starts to feel lighter. And as he chases after them, he also feels it's much easier to breathe. Seeing the tightrope he came from in contrast to the heaven-like place he's reached, he thinks he never thought there could be a place like this. And in his mind, he's honest with himself as he realizes this is it. This is the new life he's been searching for and has longed to get. After feeling that and hearing the kind words from Onii, Sakura was smiled at by his friends. Suwa approached him and explained that causing trouble for others or helping to solve other people's problems isn't entirely bad. Suwa felt that Sakura had been alone for a long time, so it must be hard for him to change suddenly. But he told him to take it slowly, and he hoped Sakura would get used to relying on others. Their classmates smiled at Sakura, and Onii suddenly shouted for them to forget about it, adding that it seemed their grade captain still didn't understand them, to which his trio of best friends agreed. Onii pointed at Sakura and asked if he had heard what they said. Onii then declared that after class that day, they would go out to eat and have a get-together to learn more about each other. Sakura made a side comment that Onii just wanted to eat food. Kurita, Takanashi, and Kakeuchi shouted that they wanted barbecue, fried skewers, manya, and cake, to which one of their classmates remarked that they didn't have money for that. Onii suddenly shouted at Sakura, saying he needed to decide and that it didn't matter what he wanted. Sakura wondered why and asked if it was really the grade captain's job to decide what to eat. Suwa told him to just pick whatever he wanted to eat. Sakura thought about it, but his classmates looked at him eagerly, each wanting something different like meat or cake. In the end, none of his classmates' choices were picked. Instead, Sakura said he wanted omelette rice. He looked to see their reactions, and they all seemed okay with it, deciding to go to photos. Sakura felt relieved seeing that. Kakeuchi commented that the fried onigiri there was really delicious, which caught Sakura's attention, and he asked if it was true. Suwa told Nirei that it seemed Sakura was feeling better now, but when he noticed something off with Nirei, he immediately asked what was wrong, surprising Nirei with the question. Suwa explained that Nirei's behavior was a bit unusual because usually, he was the first to speak up when Sakura doubted himself. Nirei laughed nervously and explained that he was just a bit out of it that day, but he was happy that Sakura was back to his perky self, while Suwa just stared at him. In the next scene, they went to cafe photos, where Kotoha got angry at them and asked if they were crazy for wanting to make so much omelette rice for everyone. She said that their place wasn't a restaurant and told them to just sit down and settle for tea. They pleaded with her to make it, claiming that their omelette rice was the best in the world, which annoyed Kotoha. Kotoha saw Sakura and called him over, asking if he was feeling better. Sakura suddenly apologized for what happened yesterday and said he would return the container Kotoha had brought next time. Kotoha stared at him and then, creeped out by Sakura's behavior, asked if he still had a fever, surprising Sakura with her question. Suddenly, Kakeuchi pushed Sakura to the back, saying that the main star belonged there. Kotoha was puzzled when she heard them call Sakura the main star. In the following scene, Kotoha had finished cooking and served them the omelette rice, which they thoroughly enjoyed. Kotoha was speechless because she had already run out of the eggs she bought yesterday. Takanashi then spoke up and pointed out that since Sakura had admitted to being dumb, they should all join in and share what makes them lame. This caught Kotoha's attention, so she started listening to them, and Takanashi's classmates eagerly urged him to go first. Nervously, Takanashi explained that he was actually terrified of insects, which left Sakura and the others speechless. Takanashi, trembling, said that he especially hated seeing the underside of hard-shelled insects, and even just thinking about it gave him goosebumps. Suwa commented that he didn't expect that because Takanashi was so good at fighting, and Nirei added that no one would have guessed that was his weakness. Next, Tsujira followed suit, nervously admitting that he was very scared of ghosts. He said that when he went to the bathroom at night, he had to turn on all the lights. Otherwise, he would be terrified. When he shampooed his hair, he had to keep his eyes open. Kiryu was taken aback and asked if he didn't end up getting soap in his eyes, to which Tsujira agreed but said it was better than closing his eyes. Tsujira then asked if Sakura was also scared of ghosts, aggressively explaining that no matter how much they trained, they couldn't beat up a ghost because they couldn't touch them, which made Sakura awkwardly admit he understood. While this was happening, Suwa commented that he was glad Sakura understood that they were all the same. Sakura stared at him, and Suwa added that everyone has their own weaknesses. They all have sides that aren't so cool, but that wasn't something to be feared or ashamed of. So, they were all just the same. While listening to them, Kotoha smiled. Kiryu then asked Suwa what his weakness was, and Suwa explained that he was afraid of Manju. Kiryu was stunned because Suwa was afraid of the title of a Rakugo story. Sakura was also puzzled and thought that Suwa was referring to the food, wondering if Suwa was afraid of getting a stomach ache from eating too much. Kiryu pointed out that Suwa had tricked him, and Sakura had believed him. Sakura was surprised to learn that Suwa was just joking, and Suwa said he didn't expect them to believe him. Nire looked at his notebook of information about his friends and asked Suwa if he disliked natto, which shocked Suwa. When the trio and Enzai heard this, they grinned, listening to Suwa's attempt to cover up the truth by asking Nire where he got that lie from. Nire explained that he got the info while asking others about him. Enzai suddenly called Kotoha and asked if they had any natto, to which Kotoha replied, asking why they would have such a thing. Kurita decided to go to the convenience store to buy some, but Suwa quickly stopped him, saying they should continue talking there. They started teasing Suwa, saying someone should go buy the natto. As this was happening, Sakura watched them, and eventually, he started laughing, catching everyone's attention. They all stared at him, which surprised Sakura, and he irritably and shyly asked what was going on. They just smiled at him and insisted that Suwa should eat some natto to make Sakura smile more. Suwa told Sakura not to sell himself so cheaply because his smiling face was worth more than that. Kotoha smiled while watching them and thought to herself that this was what she meant when she told Sakura that coming to Furin was the right choice. She said to herself that she was very happy for Sakura. Meanwhile, outside the cafe, Umemiya arrived with Hiragi and Tsubakino, and they saw that Sakura and his friends were inside. They seemed to be having a good time, and Umemiya wondered what they were talking about. Hiragi quickly stopped him. Umemiya excused himself, saying he just wanted to join in because they looked like they were having fun, but Hiragi told him to learn to read the room. Sakura saw them through the window, and as they were leaving, he and Tsubakino made eye contact. Tsubakino waved at Sakura, and he just stared at him. In the next scene, we move to the rooftop of Furin High School, where we see that the saplings planted by Umemiya have grown, and Nire is delighted. Suwa commented that the days were getting longer, and the mornings and evenings were becoming warmer. He pointed out how the Sakura tree there had already turned green. While drinking, Sakura seemed bored with the situation and remarked that the more pressing issue was what they were all doing there. It was shown that all the students were on the rooftop. He pointed out that as they were heading home, Umemiya suddenly announced that anyone not busy with their rounds or anything else should come to the rooftop. It seemed like they were gathering everyone there regardless of grade. Sakura wondered what they were going to do with so many people there. Suddenly, someone answered his question. It was Hiragi, along with Matsumoto and Yanagita. Hiragi explained that they weren't doing anything specific there. It was just a usual get-together that Umemiya liked to host so students could talk to each other, which puzzled Sakura. Hiragi explained that the Bo Foreign organization was divided based on their class. Even though Umemiya really wanted to talk to everyone, he also wanted them to get along and connect regardless of which team they belonged to. So, that was why he wanted to create an opportunity for everyone. Nire understood and immediately wrote it down in his top-secret handbook. Hiragi added that Umemiya also wanted to show off his garden to everyone there. Sakura was speechless, while Suwa and Nire commented that it looked like Tsujishita was acting as a tour guide there, discussing how much the plants had grown. Hiragi told Nire to mention that to Umemiya, as it would surely make him happy. Sakura finished his drink and wondered what to drink next. When he turned around, he saw Tsubakino looking at him. He remembered seeing him with Umemiya the previous day. Sakura was puzzled as Tsubakino slowly approached him, and when he finally faced him, Sakura was stunned and thought to himself how tall Tsubakino was. Tsubakino smiled at him, and when he finally spoke, Sakura was shocked by how deep his voice was. When Nire called him Tsubakino-san, Sakura was bewildered and shocked to realize that the person in front of him was a man. Nire was surprised while Takanashi and the others laughed at his reaction. Nire quickly admonished Sakura not to be rude to Tsubakino, as he was one of the four kings. Tsubakino gently said it was okay. He said that he shared something in common with them and asked if it was alright to call him Tsubaki-chan because he preferred it. Nire then called him Tsubaki-chan-san and asked if he already knew Sakura. Tsubakino happily agreed and said that who wouldn't know him after all the crazy things he's done. He added that Sakura's looks is right up his alley. He began to describe Sakura, saying that his eyes and hair were cool, his simple outfit suited him well, and the white colors complemented his skin tone. Sakura was bewildered, while Suwa asked if he had seen Tsubakino before but hadn't thought much of it, pointing out that they were in an all-boys school. Embarrassed, Sakura quieted Suwa, saying that he had indeed seen Tsubakino before but hadn't really thought about it. Hiragi side-commented, wondering what Sakura's problem was. Tsubakino then mentioned that perhaps it was because no one expected someone born as a male to wear such clothes. He apologized and hoped Sakura would get used to his appearance. Sakura quickly replied that it didn't matter to him, and he was just surprised. There was nothing wrong with wearing those clothes, so Tsubakino didn't need to apologize. His friend smiled, and Tsubakino was surprised at Sakura's reaction but soon hugged him, calling him sweet. This caused Sakura to choke, and someone quickly intervened to stop Tsubakino. It turned out to be Tsubakino's second-in-command twins. He introduced them as Surayu Sakaki, the older twin, and Yuryu Sakaki, the younger twin. Sakura and the twins stared at each other. When Surayu looked at him, he stared back, while Yuryu quickly averted his gaze. Surayu moved closer to Sakura's face, marveling that he thought Sakura was wearing colored contacts, but they were natural, and his hair, which he initially thought was dyed, was also natural. He called Sakura a natural fashionista. Tsubakino pushed Surayu away and told him to stop staring at Sakura, but added that Sakura could stare at him anytime he wanted. Surayu commented that Tsubakino was the same way. Then Umemiya arrived with a special pork soup he had made and offered it to everyone. Tsubakino immediately asked for some, but noticed a part of his hair out of place. He turned around to fix it before approaching Umemiya. Sakura was speechless as he watched. After tasting the soup, Tsubakino praised it, saying it was delicious and that the stock was just right. He suggested that Umemiya should open a restaurant, to which Umemiya replied, as if. Tsubakino continued to praise Umemiya, saying everything he made was delicious, while Nire was giving Sakura some soup. When Sakura heard Tsubakino repeatedly saying that he was falling for Umemiya, something suddenly clicked for him. As Nire drank the soup and enjoyed it, he looked at Sakura, who was shaking and blushing furiously. Tsubakino grew concerned and asked what the problem was, while Umemiya thought that maybe the soup was too hot. Suwa explained to them that Sakura was extra sensitive to openly affectionate people, and even a small display of affection could make him blush. Suwa added that Sakura was likely reacting to Tsubakino's affection for Umemiya. This made Tsubakino's heart race, and he blushed too. Matsumoto commented that Tsubakino was like an open book, and even someone as dense as him could see what was happening. Surayu explained that Tsubakino was trying to hide his feelings, while Hiragi mentioned that everyone in their team already knew Tsubakino liked Umemiya. Tsubakino put down his soup and admitted that it was true, then praised Sakura for being such a pure and sweet kid, making Sakura blush even more. Tsubakino pointed out Sakura's blushing face, and an irritated Sakura asked if there was a problem. Tsubakino replied that there was no problem, and that he was just happy Sakura took him seriously enough to react that way. Tsubakino tried to be cute and thanked Sakura, while Umemiya smiled slightly and Sakura was still puzzled. Tsuryu then pointed out that they needed to leave, which surprised Tsubakino as he had forgotten about it. Hiragi asked if he was still going. Tsubakino said goodbye to Umemiya, who told them to take care. Before leaving, Tsubakino stared at Sakura, who was sipping his soup, prompting Sakura to ask what his problem was. Tsubakino suddenly asked if Sakura wanted to go on a date with him, causing Sakura to jump in shock and embarrassment. In the next scene, we see Sakura looking irritated and embarrassed, walking behind Tsubakino, Nirei, and Suwa. The three of them turn to look at him, and Nirei asks why he's walking so far behind them. Sakura yells back, clarifying that this isn't a date. Tsubakino laughs and asks if he wanted a solo date instead, which flusters Sakura even more. Suwa teasingly asks Sakura if he even knows what a date is, to which Sakura tells him to shut up. Feeling frustrated and irritated, Sakura is visibly uncomfortable. Nirei then asks Tsubakino where they are going. Tsubakino apologizes for not explaining earlier and says they are going to visit an old man named Ito-san, whose wife passed away. The sudden loss of his wife caused him to become depressed, so they visit him from time to check on him. Nirei asks if Tsubakino always goes there with his second-in-command, to which Tsubakino agrees, saying they only started doing this recently. However, he thought it would be better and refreshing for Ito to see new faces. Feeling the pressure, Suwa asked what exactly Tsubakino wants them to do. Tsubakino explains that it's not too tense. They just need to talk to the old man, help with house chores, and spend quality time with Ito. They should share their youthful spirit with him. Nirei understands and agrees, saying they will do their best. In the next scene, they arrive at Ito's house, and he warmly greets Tsubakino with a bright smile. Ito immediately tells Tsubakino that he has dorayaki from Nazuna restaurant and they can eat it. Nirei and Suwa are surprised, thinking the old man doesn't seem depressed. Sakura whispers to Nirei that Ito doesn't look depressed at all, to which Nirei agrees, adding that he seems practically beaming with joy. Suwa notes that the well-kept garden doesn't look like that of a depressed man's house. Soon, Ito notices Sakura and the others, commenting that he hasn't seen them before. Tsubakino explains that they are first years. Nirei and Suwa greet him while Sakura just stares. Ito understands and comments on how fashionable the foreign students are. He points out that Nirei's hair color is like a mimosa, which confuses Nirei until Suwa explains that it's the name of a flower. Ito then admires Suwa's coral earrings, calling them vintage and saying they suit him well. When Ito finally looks at Sakura, he immediately notices his eyes and compliments their beauty, comparing them to the color of twilight. This makes Sakura blush from the compliment. Ito mentions that it reminds him of his memories of walking by the sea with his wife, to which Tsubakino says he loves that story. Tsubakino explains that the setting sun would sink into the sea while Ito and his wife stood by the beach, admiring the beautiful scenery. Ito said it was really beautiful, and they couldn't move even after the sun had fully set. They stumbled while walking home in the dark, and by the time they got back to their house, they were covered in sand. His wife was sad at that time because she had just bought the dress she was wearing. Ito suddenly realized he had been talking non-stop, so he apologized to Tsubakino and invited them all inside to sit down. Nirei noticed that Sakura wasn't moving and saw that his face was red and he was trembling again, so he asked what was wrong, but Sakura just told him to be quiet. When Tsubakino entered the house, he immediately noticed Ito's unfinished meal and told him it wasn't good to leave it out. He suggested Ito could store the leftovers in the refrigerator. Tsubakino also pointed out that one of Ito's lights was out. Ito explained it had stopped working that morning and he was planning to replace it. Nirei cheerfully volunteered to change the light bulb, saying it was too dangerous for Ito to stand on chairs. Meanwhile, Suwa noticed something on the floor and asked if Ito was fixing it. Ito explained he had started, but had to stop to use the bathroom and then forgot about it. Soon, Tsubakino, Nirei, and Suwa began helping around Ito's house, while Sakura just stood there. Feeling nervous, Sakura looked around for something to do. Ito tapped him on the shoulder and asked him to carry a box to the room at the end of the hallway. Sakura did as asked, thinking the room Ito mentioned was the one at the very end. As he pushed aside a curtain blocking the door, he sneezed from the dust. When he opened his eyes, he saw a room filled with neatly organized clothes, hats, and shoes. Sakura thought to himself that there were a lot of clothes. He commented that even if you wore a different outfit every day, it would take a whole year to wear them all. He was startled when Ito peeked in and apologized, saying that wasn't the room he meant. Ito explained he thought Sakura might get confused about the direction, to which Sakura agreed. Sakura looked back at the room he had entered and thought that since it was so dusty, Ito probably didn't use those clothes anymore. After that, they took a break and ate. During the snack, Tsubakino suddenly invited Ito on a date. Sakura commented that Tsubakino seems to say those words a lot and asked if he really liked going on dates that much. Tsubakino responded that Sakura was too uptight, irritating Sakura, who asked what he meant by that. Tsubakino suggested to Ito that since the weather was warming up, they should go to a cafe or movie theater. He suggested Ito wear his suave gray hat, the one he wore when he and his wife went to see the cherry blossoms the year before last, paired with a light beige jacket and a pink necktie. Tsubakino commented on how cute they looked walking together, admiring the flowers. He added that while they were walking under the cherry trees with the petals falling, it felt like a scene from a movie. Suwa and Nirei were amazed by this, while Ito commented that he was exaggerating too much. As Sakura continued eating, Nirei remarked that Ito and his wife must have loved being fashionable, and Suwa found the story beautiful. Sakura thought that maybe this was why Ito had so many clothes. Ito explained that his wife had always followed the latest trends, and after talking to her about her hobbies and interests, she suddenly got him interested in fashion as well. He gave her a beautiful dress as a gift, so flowery it seemed to glimmer in the light. Despite this, his wife still managed to find accessories and shoes to match the outfit. Tsubakino said he loved that story and asked if it was true that his wife wore it for a long time. Ito hoped she had, and Tsubakino commented that of course, she did. Ito explained that his wife was a very kind woman who always smiled and was never very talkative, but the times they spent together were filled with joy. But, he added, that was just his perspective. Sakura blushed with excitement, while Nirei commented on how sweet Ito's relationship with his wife was. Tsubakino looked at him thoughtfully. In the next scene, they were leaving Ito's house, saying their goodbyes and promising to return soon. Ito suddenly remarked that maybe it happened because he saw Sakura's eyes, which puzzled Sakura. Ito explained that perhaps, whether it was because of that or not, his memories with his wife came flooding back, and he felt happy that day. He thanked Sakura, making him blush again from the affection he received, and said he didn't do much. After leaving Ito's house, Nirei commented that he was worried when Tsubakino said Ito was depressed, but it seemed his condition was better than they thought. Tsubakino agreed and explained that Ito felt better than last year, but sometimes he still seemed to struggle a lot. Suwa looked at him intently, and Nirei couldn't believe it. Tsubakino continued, saying that in the past, if Ito knew someone was coming over, he wouldn't leave his dishes on the table, and he would dress nicely even if he was just at home. He acknowledged that losing someone important to you can have a severe negative impact, but he thought there might be more to Ito's depression than just that. Sakura and the others stared at him, and Tsubakino quickly brushed it off, saying that even though he asked Ito about it, Ito just told him he was overthinking. Despite this, Tsubakino wanted to restore Ito's former vitality. He said he would do everything he could if it meant Ito would be happy again. This made Suwa ask why Tsubakino was willing to go so far for Ito, causing Tsubakino to stop walking. He explained that he owed a great debt to Ito and his wife. Looking at them, Tsubakino added that the couple loved him for who he truly was. Suddenly, we transition to Tsubakino explaining that ever since he was young, he liked cute and pretty things. However, one day, he just stopped talking about the things he liked to live as a seemingly normal person in a normal world, despite being different. In the next scene, we go back to when Tsubakino was in 2nd grade, where some girls in his classroom were making bracelets and accessories, catching his attention. His focus was broken when 2 boys invited him to play outside. One of the boys turned around when the girls squealed, commenting that those girls were at it again. They mocked the girls for saying things were cute, questioning what was so good about the dumb stuff they were making. When the boy asked Tsubakino if he agreed, he reluctantly did. After that, the 3 of them hurriedly went outside to play soccer. In the following scene, before heading home from school, one of Tsubakino's friends handed him a magazine page featuring a controllable toy Jeep. The friend mentioned that Tsubakino liked manly stuff like cars. At first, Tsubakino didn't know what to say, but he pretended and thanked his friend, saying he was happy to get it. The 2 friends said goodbye and asked Tsubakino to give them any pages he found about bikes. Tsubakino stared at the magazine page, and when he looked at the other side, his mood brightened upon seeing pictures of accessories like bracelets and hairpins. He found them incredibly cute and commented on the beautiful colors and cute designs. He thought he could put them in his folder when he got home. However, remembering his friend's words about liking manly stuff, his smile faded. He looked at his reflection in the mirror, called himself a liar, and felt conflicted. As he walked home, Tsubakino saw an earring on the ground and wondered if someone had dropped it. He picked it up and admired its beauty. He was startled when someone behind him explained that the earring belonged to his wife. It turned out to be a younger Ito, who thanked Tsubakino for finding the earring. Tsubakino looked at Ito's outfit and commented that it was weird because Ito was a man but wore pink. He didn't understand it, but thought it looked good on him. Ito then asked Tsubakino if he liked dorayaki and invited him to their house to get some as a thank you for finding the earring. Ito cheerfully called his wife, whose name was Yui, and told her that the boy with him had found her earring. Yui asked if it was true, and Ito explained that the boy was waiting outside, so Yui decided to go see him. When Tsubakino saw Yui, his face was filled with awe as he stared at her. Ito offered him a choice of dorayaki, but Tsubakino didn't make a selection, prompting Ito to ask if there was a problem and if he didn't like dorayaki. Embarrassed, Tsubakino explained that it wasn't that he didn't like it, he was just admiring their beautiful clothes. Ito was pleased with his comment, saying that the clothes were indeed beautiful and that he had chosen them for his wife because they matched the season. He complimented Tsubakino's fashion sense, though Tsubakino shyly declined. Ito mentioned that his wife was always stylish and suggested that Tsubakino should come back to see more of her outfits. Awestruck, Tsubakino shyly agreed. After that meeting, Tsubakino started visiting Ito and Yui almost daily, thoroughly enjoying seeing the couple dress in their beautiful outfits. One day, Tsubakino entered the same room that Sakura had entered earlier at Ito's house and saw Yui applying lipstick. Yui noticed him and smiled, asking if the lipstick looked good. Flustered, Tsubakino said he wasn't sure since he was a boy. Ito then called Yui, asking where the tea leaves were, and she went to help him. After Yui left, Tsubakino stared at the lipstick she had used, hesitantly considering trying it. Lost in thought, he didn't notice Yui returning. She asked if he wanted to try the lipstick, causing his heart to race as he nervously said no. Yui gave him a reassuring pat on the head, saying it was okay. In the next scene, Tsubakino is shown wearing the lipstick, looking at himself in the mirror. Ito entered the room with tea and was surprised to see Tsubakino, commenting that the lipstick suited him. Suddenly, tears streamed down Tsubakino's face as he questioned why he liked such things. He said that normal boys didn't want to wear lipstick, but for some reason, he found it beautiful and it made him happy. He expressed his frustration with lying to his friends and family, wishing he liked the same things other boys liked. He wished he was normal. Tsubakino began to sob, and Yui comforted him, asking if he knew what high heels were. Tsubakino was puzzled and asked if Yui was referring to the shoes that women wear to look taller, and Yui confirmed this. Yui further explained that originally, high heels were made for men, which shocked Tsubakino. Ito agreed and explained that they were initially made for warriors to stabilize themselves while using a bow on horseback. Tsubakino asked if that was true, and Yui added that even makeup was originally applied to the face as a charm to protect the wearer. Tsubakino remained silent, and Yui said it was important to understand the distinction between men and women, but at the same time, gender is just a small part of who they are. Tsubakino was still confused, so Ito confirmed it was true, and after all, when high heels were first invented and lipstick was first made, people didn't think they could only wear something because they were a man or a woman. Most likely, people just wore whatever they wanted because they liked it. Earlier, Tsubakino said he wondered why he liked those things even though he was a man, Yui explained, but it's not because he's a man. It's because he's Tsubakino, and that's why he likes what he likes. Tsubakino's face gleamed as he listened, and Ito added that normal is only defined by what the majority thinks. He explained that high heels and makeup have meanings behind them that changed over the years, so they're unclear because of their history. That's why it's okay for Tsubakino to enjoy the things he likes. Yui brushed something off Tsubakino's shoulder and said that for her, she believes that no matter what, she loves Tsubakino when he enjoys the things he likes, and Ito feels the same way. Soon, Yui finished applying makeup on Tsubakino, and Ito commented that he understood why Tsubakino liked it. As the three of them looked into the mirror, Yui told Tsubakino that the makeup suited him well. Tsubakino started to cry, and we returned to the present, where he explained that he was scared back then. He said he felt different from everyone else and was afraid of being abandoned, of being alone. But Ito and Yui accepted him for who he was. They told him they loved him. He realized that he wasn't alone anymore, so he was able to say that he loved the things in his life. And that is why now, he will help Ito. Suwa stared, and Sakura reflected on what Enzai had said about his behavior. As he was thinking about it, he suddenly heard someone sniffling next to him. It turned out that Nire was crying because of Tsubakino's story, which surprised him. Tsubakino asked if he was okay, and Nire agreed, saying that his story was just really touching. Then, Nire grabbed Suwa and Sakura by the arm, explaining that to make sure they cheer up Ito and find out what's really troubling him, they would do everything they could to help. Tsubakino stared at him and asked if he was serious. Nire quickly confirmed and asked Suwa and Sakura if he was right. Suwa agreed, and Sakura asked when, which puzzled Tsubakino. Embarrassed, Sakura asked when Tsubakino would visit Ito again. Tsubakino looked at him and then joyfully hugged them, saying they were precious. He added that they shouldn't waste any time and that they should visit Ito again tomorrow, which surprised Sakura. The next day, they arrived in front of Ito's house. Suwa commented that they came back even though they had just visited yesterday. As Nire was about to speak, they suddenly heard a loud crash and things falling, so Tsubakino immediately rushed inside to check on Ito. It turned out that Ito had just dropped some items from his shelf, so he apologized for alarming them. Suwa remarked on the mess, and Nire asked if he was hurt, while Tsubakino asked what had happened. Ito explained that he was trying to get an album, but some things fell. Tsubakino got excited upon hearing that and said he wanted to see the contents of the album. Ito said that after talking to all of them about his wife yesterday, he suddenly wanted to flip through the album again. Tsubakino quickly cleaned up the fallen items so they could look at the pictures in the album. In the next scene, while drinking tea, they started looking through it. Ito showed a picture of his wife at the beach, saying he loved her dress because it flowed in the wind while she walked, and it suited her perfectly. Nire noticed that Ito looked very happy while explaining. Nire whispered to Sakura and Suwa that Ito seemed fine, and Suwa agreed, saying it was hard to tell what was bothering him. Tsubakino noticed that the album was filled with pictures of Ito's wife, and in most of them, she wasn't looking at the camera. Ito explained that she didn't like having her picture taken, which surprised Tsubakino. She would turn away when she saw the camera, but the pictures were still beautiful, so he kept them. He said they could say he was like a peeper taking candid photos, which left Sakura and the others speechless. Tsubakino asked if that meant they didn't have any pictures together, adding that they must have at least one from their wedding. Ito said they did have one, and it was kept in their room, but it wasn't from their wedding. Ito retrieved the photo he mentioned, and while he was getting it, Tsubakino thought that if it was a single picture, it must be very special, perhaps from their honeymoon. Suwa wondered if they had gone overseas, and Nire said it must be really nice, while Sakura thought to himself how excited they all were. Soon, Ito returned and showed them the photo of him and his wife together. Tsubakino noticed that it was taken just outside their house in the garden. When Sakura peeked to look at it, he saw that it was simple, just the two of them standing together in front of a newly planted tree. Nevertheless, the photo had a strong impact on Sakura, making him flustered and spit out his drink, which startled Nire, Suwa, and Tsubakino and puzzled Ito. Sakura started coughing, so Ito immediately brought a tissue to wipe his face, saying it must have hurt since he often choked on food as well. Nire wondered if it was really that surprising, while Suwa thought that Sakura wasn't actually surprised. Tsubakino then speculated that the picture overloaded Sakura's romance sensor, causing him to choke. Embarrassed, Sakura told him to be quiet, explaining that he just choked on the Castella cake. Suwa pointed out that it wouldn't cause him to blush. Ito, puzzled, listened as Tsubakino explained that whenever Sakura feels anything romantic, his face turns bright red. Ito asked if that was really true, and Sakura told them to be quiet. Ito then said that people around him always commented on how he would blush because of his wife, suggesting he was easy to read. Tsubakino suddenly asked Sakura what he thought about the picture they saw. Flustered, Sakura said it wasn't that special, but looked like they were happy and enjoying themselves. He added that he said this because Tsubakino seemed like Ito's wife when talking to Umamiya. Ito, Nire, and Suwa stared, while Tsubakino blushed. Overjoyed, Tsubakino asked if he was really that cute and, in his excitement, gave Sakura more cake. Blushing, he explained to Ito that Umamiya was the guy he always talked about, and that he had a crush on him. Tsubakino suddenly stopped talking when he saw Ito crying while he explained. Everyone was shocked, and Tsubakino asked Ito if something was wrong, with Suwa suspecting that Sakura was to blame, which startled Sakura. Ito quickly wiped his tears and picked up the photo he had shown them, asking Sakura if that was really what it looked like to him. Tsubakino wondered why Ito needed to ask that. Ito explained that ever since his wife left him alone, he started worrying if Yui had truly been happy. This puzzled Tsubakino, and Ito added that he loved her and was very happy to be with her. He explained that their marriage was arranged, and since then, his wife had always been quiet, making him constantly wonder about Yui's true feelings. Nire then understood what had been troubling Ito. As Tsubakino was about to speak, Ito said that when it was just the two of them, it never really bothered him. But now that he was alone, those worries had grown bigger and bigger. But if Sakura really thought that his wife looked happy, then he felt like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Nire and Sakura blushed, while Suwa just stared at him. After a while, Suwa asked if he could ask a question because something had been bothering him. Suwa inquired about the reason why Ito had taken that photo. Ito looked puzzled. Suwa explained that he was interested in the dogwood tree in the picture, even from the day before when they visited. He pointed out that Ito's garden was full of non-flowering trees except for the dogwood tree, which stood out to visitors. They had even taken pictures there, which is why he asked. Nire was confused by Suwa's statement about the tree, how it jumps out, while Sakura called him an idiot, saying trees don't jump. Tsubakino clarified that Suwa didn't mean it literally. Ito smiled at Suwa's sharp observation and explained that gardening was one of his hobbies. His wife never said anything about his garden before, but suddenly she asked him to plant a dogwood tree. He mentioned earlier that she didn't like taking pictures, but after planting the dogwood tree, it was Yui herself who suggested they take a picture together. The photo he showed them was taken at that time. Suwa listened intently as Ito continued, saying that back then, he got a bit too excited thinking his wife was becoming interested in his hobbies. Suwa then asked if something had happened between them before planting the dogwood tree. This puzzled Ito and the others. Suwa asked if there was anything that came to Ito's mind regarding that, and after thinking for a moment, Ito said that if he had to point out one thing, it was an embarrassing moment he still remembered clearly. In the next scene, we see Ito back in time with Yui, calling her to tell her about their plans for the next break, but he stopped when he saw her quietly sewing a hat. She looked up and asked if there was a problem, to which he replied that there wasn't, and that he was just looking for a bright place to trim his nails. As he was trimming his nails, he glanced at his wife sewing, and then commented that Yui looked beautiful when she was absorbed in fashion, and he wished he could be fashionable enough for her to look at him like that. Back in the present, Ito explained that he always called his wife beautiful, but never asked her to look at him that way. He realized afterward how passive-aggressive he sounded and felt very embarrassed about it. He added that thinking back, it was probably then that those worries began. In any case, Yui never said anything, and perhaps her wanting to plant the dogwood tree was just something she liked to do at that time. He admitted he would never know what she was really thinking now, and regretted not asking her more often back then. Suwa suddenly commented that it didn't seem like Yui was indifferent, and he thought she was really angry with Ito. Ito was shocked and asked what Suwa meant by that. Suwa then asked if Ito's late wife was the one who planted the dogwood tree, and Ito, still puzzled, nodded. Suwa explained that in the language of flowers, dogwood means persistence, a brilliant love. And do you think I'm indifferent towards you? Or do you think that I don't care about you? A powerful realization struck Ito, and he thought that perhaps Yui's reaction when he said he wished she would look at him the same way she looked at fashion was irritation and frustration. Suwa added that when Yui planted the dogwood tree, it might have been her way of arguing with him. Ito stared in disbelief, and Tsubakino commented that Ito didn't really understand his wife. Tsubakino pointed out that Yui taught him that it was okay to love whatever he wanted, and passionately said that she would never stay with a man she didn't love. Nire agreed and explained that although he had only heard Ito's story about his wife yesterday and today, it was clear how happy Ito was when talking about his time with her. If he were in that situation, he would be extremely happy to be with someone like Yui. Ito frowned as he processed these realizations, and Nire suddenly asked Sakura if what he said was correct, which surprised Sakura. Embarrassed, Sakura admitted that he didn't really understand those things, but he said that no one would show such a happy face if they were with someone who wasn't important to them. Ito stared at him and agreed, saying that Yui wasn't that kind of person, and he should have known better since he was the closest to her, but he ended up looking pathetic. Soon after, he thanked Tsubakino, Sakura, Nire, and Suwa, and he apologized to his wife. He realized that thinking of the dogwood tree as Yui's way of arguing with him to tell him he was wrong. He said that Yui probably never thought he would realize it, but she was truly elegant in every way. Ito admitted that he could never compete with someone like his wife, and while saying this, a scene was shown where Yui playfully teased him while watering the dogwood tree, and he was inside the house reading a book.